This is Access to LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is the October 5th meeting of the Long Beach Budget and Finance Committee. You can find more information for this meeting at www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Okay, do we need to wait a couple of minutes? I got a couple of minutes till an hour, but if we're, oh no, I guess we're okay, we're good. All right. So I've got the agenda up. Hopefully people can see it, and we'll try to roll through it as quick as we can, as always. And we're glad to have Dan and Carl in attendance. Tim's on his phone, so we're all here. All the players are here, I would say. Helen will be mic'd up in the room as well. She's going to help represent Tim this morning. I don't think we have to do anything else to start other than just start the agenda. Monthly reports, I know I can share what Helen shared with us, and maybe I should do that now. I'm going to stop the agenda and then share the information that Helen shared with us. Give me 1 second here. That's the capital plan. Stop share. Apologize for taking a minute here. I think we'll start with those financials that you had, Helen.
Okay. We've got the summary. Sorry. Okay. We have the summary of revenue and expense by fund, and we're doing pretty well. There's some areas in the general fund where we have analyzed costs, and we're going to be allocating some costs over to the other funds, such as Riverboat Fund and cumulative capital for picking up some capital costs that pertain to doing work on the building and stuff here. So we'll be proposing those and reviewing them and bringing them to you on down the line. Funds doing well, local road, everything looks pretty much on where we need to be. We're reconciling through our balance sheet set and determining what our cash flow needs. Hopefully I can put together hopefully next month a cash flow report that'll tell you more of what our needs are projected for the rest of the year and what's coming in and where we stand. So that's where we're at on that. We have a payroll comparison report. Pretty much we're ahead of where we were in prior years, but it isn't substantial. It's due to a lot of overtime, additional costs in the police department, additional employees being on and other people that are here full time. I don't see anything major impacting us budget-wise. We should be able to handle it. And let's see, anything else major going on here? We have our capital program. Our cash program we're doing pretty well on. There's some unallocated cash. These are adjustments that need to be made for our debt fund transfers that occur to Mellon. They have to be booked, so we know what that is. So everything's looking pretty good on our cash, combined cash investment account. Any questions?
Yeah, let's, just for kicks, I think, why don't we just roll through these reports real quick, I think for everybody's benefit. Hopefully you can see what I put up here, which is your revenue expense summary.
Right.
Is that on everyone's screen?
Yep.
Okay, so last time Mike Johnstone asked about the parentheses, and I think it's a little counterintuitive for those of us that are used to looking at standard financials. When I look at, like, for instance, that first line, total general fund revenue, and I see percent of budget. So I think what that's telling me, maybe you can help me out here. Our current actual is 888. We've got a budget of 11, which means we've only gotten in 80% of the budget. Is that correct?
You're right. Mhm.
Okay, same with the general fund expenses then. When I run across, you've got an 88.9. Essentially, that means we've spent about 88% of the budget at this point. Is that correct?
Yes. And our key elements within that in the general fund, again, go back to, legal costs have been way over budget, and I'm looking at where I can technically allocate some of those funds to other funds down the spreadsheet here. I've looked at how they were charged through in prior years and outlining where we can reallocate those expenses to, and that should reduce the expenses in the general fund and bring that percentage rate to a more reasonable range for the rest of the year.
Understood. So as we run down that percent to budget column, then ideally, if you're in a perfect world, most of those would show 3/4 or
Right.
Yeah,
7/5.
right. Mhm.
So when we run down the column, then, for instance, the only ones that are, I won't say glaring, but are something for discussion, I guess. When we look at seated revenue, does the fact that we don't have a column an entry in budget, and then obviously it doesn't carry across, is there a reason for that, or do we?
There was nothing put in the legal budget for that. I don't know why. It just was never budgeted in Gateway, and technically we can't have a budget there. However, we do have funds available from the fund balance in there that we're eating up, burning through, and we should be okay there though.
Yeah, so there is the money in there that's not reflected in this sheet. And then the expenses being 28%, that we budgeted some significant expenditure out of that account, and we haven't really done that yet.
Mhm.
Okay. And then as I scroll down, again, I'm just trying to look for outliers here. The park, I'm not concerned about that right this minute because it's not that big of a number. But when I scroll down, one of the ones that I had some questions on was the ARP, for instance. If you look at that 2,400 one, where you've got 166% of budget spent, I think is what I'm seeing there. So that one we probably.
That's a unique one because you have a rollover of funds from the prior year. And so our budget was 150 in revenue that we were expecting this year. And it's going to be a little less, and our expenditures are higher, but that's because we're eating up funds from the prior period. So it doesn't reflect our fund balance, and that's why I'm trying to develop a, fund to expense ratio sheet that'll give us a better picture of the cash flow between the fund balance and the expense sheet. So right now, when you look at the top, when you see a number, like go back to the first line, 1101R, you see we have parentheses around 1.105010. Those are what we call credits. Revenues and credits are always reflective with brackets around them, meaning that's money in our hands. Debits are always just no brackets around them and you subtract it. So what we show here is pure revenue against pure expenses. What may impact something is going into balance sheet saying this fund has fund balance And that fund balance reflects what their cash worth is. And that's where we can take additional funds and utilize them to pay expenses if our revenues aren't there. I
Understood.
can,
Understood.
okay.
Yeah, and that can't be reflected in this particular sheet then.
Right. Mhm. That would be something called a statement of changes, where we take the fund balance and we take the expenses and revenue, and where we're short on revenue, we see the difference in expense bring down the fund balance and the cash.
Understood. So there's two other outliers that I'd like to just bring forward. And one is the GO bond. I think this is a similar situation. You've got percent on expenditure. I think we still may have to reconcile that account relative to some of those parts.
That account needs to be reconciled, and I'm working on whether or not I have to separate that out completely, or so from there on, all we have running through here is the funding we get to pay that bond and the bond payment going out.
Helen,
That's where we need to be. Yeah.
this is Carl. The payments of the debt service and the revenues to pay those payments should be in a separate fund.
Exactly.
And
That's what
I thought they had been set up separately in prior years, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Exactly, and that's what I've got to clean out, because there's some of the expense allocations that are still waggling out there from last year, and the fund payments need to be separated out. And I absolutely agree with you. That's where we're going.
One other outlier is the stormwater. We've got, I think I understand that one. We bought the hydro excavator this year, so we're at 110% on expense, but that's another fund that has cash balances that you reconcile on it in a different location.
Right.
Okay. Unless anybody has any questions on this one, I'm going to stop sharing that and go to your next report. So the next one, I think, was the payroll one, if I'm not.
John, can I talk? Well, Bob Lemay here. I just want a little clarification on the payroll, Helen. I think the town council authorized 2 part-time people to work in the clerk treasurer's office. My understanding is they're working full-time, and I don't see a reflection of that. Can you kind of go through that on the payroll comparison?
Okay, so in the clerk's office, we have the clerical assistants and the clerk treasurer. So Deanna's numbers are running through there, so my numbers are running through there, and Tim Perry's are running through there. The town manager, we have to do a quarterly reallocation of part of Chief Swistek's salary into the town manager to properly reflect that. The building commissioner, part of Honor's salary goes into there. Other than that, it's pure reflection of John Wall. The inspector is Mellon, and the electrical inspector we had part-time. Those are that person's costs, plus anything that may have been a consulting type thing. The BZA secretary is what it is. The police are pretty clear as to where all that's going. Park has the manager, that's pretty stable. The park also has summer program wages, those have gone away now. Water has clerk, and part of that is Honor and, Lynn. And then the overtime and, salaries for, both the water people are in there. We allocate some of the, water wages for labor and water, those are overtime hours for them.
So specifically, where are yours and Honor's?
Mine are buried up in clerical assistance.
So that's the second one down?
Yeah, in town, manager and then spread out across, a little bit in water, and a little bit in, town management.
Can I ask you, like, for example, building commission, I don't know why we're adding anything else to that besides the commission. And can't we just open a new account if you have somebody else that's doing some extra work?
I can do that.
But it reflects, so that when people look at the building commissioner, oh, it's not a tree number.
Yeah, I can do that.
And maybe you'd want to do, then that's just the building. I don't know if you want to do the same thing.
With everyone. Okay.
When you call them something, whatever.
Helen, the, from the bottom, the fourth one, under the water section,
Yeah.
the clerk salary there, we see a $34,000 increase from $23,000 last year at this time to $57,000. Whose salaries are getting paid out of the clerk salary
Yeah.
water?
Was partly, Lynn, Honor, and myself.
Okay, so 3 employees are coming out of that. So I think that kind of tells us where some of the overruns are and some of the salaries. And there's a $34,000 increase this year in that one particular area. Not looking at the other areas, but just in that one is 34,000 that we've gone over compared to last year.
So what changed in the water department to necessitate an extra $34,000 now?
That would be, Honor coming in.
Right, but.
Yeah,
What
and
changed
part
in
time,
terms of the
and
work?
part time time,
Yeah, but what changed in terms of the work needing to be done?
just AP runs, reconciliations.
The same stuff we did.
Yeah. Yeah,
So $34,000 to do the same amount of work we did last year.
you're doing different work.
Well,
Yeah,
it's the same.
I'm doing tax work for the water department, doing the tax allocation payments and doing the tax reports for the state, sales taxes and end of the year taxes.
Didn't all that need to be done last year?
Yes, it's all been done.
Yeah, so.
And that was my cost in there last year and now it's still rolling forward.
Right, but it's.
Cause that's,
My concern is
Yeah.
$44,000 more than just last year to do the same work we did last.
we were paying a consultant last year to do it. No, who did the sales tax last year? Lynn. Okay, well,
So I guess.
I picked it up this year.
Can we maybe give a break with that? I guess.
Yes, you know, as town council, and you guys probably would want to see a breakdown of why that expense.
Well, that's what I'm doing, all the sales tax returns.
Right,
I do the quarter, the monthly, sales tax, calculations, get those in, get them paid. Make sure the bank, payments are going through Mellon, make sure the, quarterly tax documents are in. So those are all on my shoulders and
Right.
part of my salaries.
but you did that last year.
Yes, so it's always, yeah, I didn't do that last year. So I didn't-
I'm wondering if,
But it was.
Ellen, this is Carl. I'm wondering if in the prior years, that
some of Bill's salary, he didn't allocate, his time, he didn't allocate to the water utility. Is that true?
That's probably true.
And then are you also not allocating part of the chief's salary also to the water?
Not yet.
Okay. I didn't know if that had started or not. I don't have the mid-year financials, but I was just wondering.
Prior years, Bill really was not involved with any of the reports and that with the water department. Everything was done within the water department. All of the tax returns, sales tax, bank recs, melon, all that was done in the water department.
Okay, so
I guess what I'd like to see
It's a breakdown of that $34,000 to see who it went to and to do what. Can we maybe get that for you guys?
Yes.
And probably for the county? Because if we're gonna oversee the water department, we need those numbers.
Yep.
Okay?
No problem.
The question I have is, which I brought up for the building commission, the same thing. Is there a way that you could break out these accounts a little better? Like, for example, you're saying this is what you've done, and is there a way that we could see, okay, what is the total that we've paid you, and the same thing with the other people? And then we have an account, so we have.
I can run a report history on everybody and do that.
But I don't know if necessarily history, wouldn't it be
People like myself and Honor, which are working cross-bunch departments, you just take everybody out of those departments and who are doing support administrative work, and then you expense them all like in the general fund, and then a quarterly allocation based on some study rate, burn rate, and allocate out on a quarterly basis their salary to all the other departments based on work that's being done. I mean, if you want to look at it as overhead, administrative overhead, that's allocated to each department because we're doing AP work for everybody across the board. We're doing payroll work across the board, all types of other little things. And so you want to come up with the overhead rate that you charge to each department for administrative costs. Because if I go in and try and divide everybody up to the payroll module, that can get a little dicey.
So, and Tim, when we hired,
public comment or just, I mean, it's fine, I'll talk with you.
when we interviewed for the building commission, that person was to take the minutes and do the agenda. So how many hours a month do you get charged for Honor?
I can't tell you.
But can you provide that information?
Yeah.
Thank you.
okay, so let's get back on track. There are,
John, can I make a comment?
yeah, I suppose.
Okay. I just did have a question. Is Honor full-time with benefits? Is Tim Perry full-time with benefits? Are they 1099? Are they W-2? The issue that I see when salaries are literally lumped together is there was a discussion last month at HR about a building commissioner raise. And it was presented, I think there were 11 or 17 towns that were just listed In terms of salary, and it didn't say whether they were full-time, whether they were part-time, whether they were benefits, how many staff they had. And so I think if someone were to look at what does the building commissioner get paid, and it includes part of honor, it's not accurate. And so I look at having run an office for 30 years where salary was salary, W-2 was W-2, 1099 was 1099. So I think it's just kind of confusing, especially when you're trying to look at increases or raises for people, that it's not accurate. So thank you.
In response, I believe honor and myself, we don't, and Lynn, we don't receive benefits. That's a given. Tim's town clerk, he does. The building commissioner doesn't receive benefits. And off the top of my head, I can't remember if the inspector receives benefits because he's part-time. I don't believe so.
Well, I think we've kind of gotten down a wormhole here. We do need information relative to how we're paying people when we start talking about comparative information and what we're going to do for future salary increases and or 1099, whatever, however we're paying people. I think that's something that we do need to get a handle on. I agree with the points made. But let's stay on task here this morning. Part of the additional expenditures that were involved in what the numbers that we're seeing on the increase on the 930 column over the 2022, 2021, we, I think, all understood, at least at the budget and finance level, that we were going to have some additional expenditures as we brought the new clerk treasurer in and we tried to clean up some of the accounting information so that it was more usable for management decisions. As I look at the information that we've shared this morning and we have in the last few months as we've tightened things up, I'm getting way better information, more accurate information, more breakdowns than I've ever seen before in my 2.5 years involved in the town council. So I think we've made significant strides in what we're reporting. I think we can, we do need to do better in some areas and we can request more detail as we move through. But this is significantly more accurate, more detail, and more broadly usable information than I've seen before. I think that costs money to get that information, and that's what I think you're seeing. Whether or not we're using individuals in their correct capacities in general, I think as Tim gets into the position farther down the road, and Helen as well, and Honor and the rest of us, that we will have more to offer. But I think to be in the position that we're in, 3/4 of the first year in with the new administration in the town hall, I think we're doing pretty good. One thing I wanted to ask relative to the cash and the financial statements on the water side. On the financial statements, we had the water listed in their revenue and expenses, but we don't have their cash in the cash, I don't believe, report. Is that correct, Helen?
That's correct, and that's something that Tim and I are working on. And then the report that we issue right now needs to change, and that's a programming report that I have to work with Civic on. So that's going to take a couple of months to do because that's recoding and rewriting the subcode in that report to get it where we need it to be. Okay. So you would have line up there. Ideally, when you look at the cash report right now, it's you've got the cash at the top, which is the town cash, the utility clearing cash, which is cash that flows between water and us. Ideally, you'll have the town cash and the water cash, and a disbursement account, general cash account for the town, which will just be whatever's left in a disbursement account to pay bills. So there'd be 3 cash accounts reflected on the sheet. And then what's below is your cash allocation reconciliation, which is your basically fund balance. So that's driven by the ins and outs of cash related to that account. And I can put a schematic together on how that all works so you understand in a flow chart.
Very good. So again, that's something that we're working toward in this final quarter of the year, so that when we get running in January, we're going to have, well, at least in the first quarter, we'll have information that includes all of the town's funds and all of the revenues and expenditures, and some projections and things like that, so we can analyze where we're at. And the reason that's important to understand the dovetailing of the revenue expenses with the cash positions is, one of the things that we're going to talk about a little later is the capital program. And this is where I hope to have maybe Sender help us a little bit. He's done some projections for us in the past in terms of the capital program. So we have a fairly aggressive capital program that we hope to implement by the end of this quarter for the coming year. And the only way to do that with some intelligence is to be able to say that the reconciliation between the cash and then those revenue expenditures leaves us in a position to be able to afford certain things. So that's where we want to go, for the first quarter of the year, actually by the end of this quarter. I'm kind of done with the budgeting information. Unless somebody else has more questions, we can move on to the unfinished business. The quarterly and mid-year financials, are we in a position to say that our financial reporting for the end of the year is going to be tight and in good shape? Do we need Carl for more or less? I guess that's a question.
It should be in good shape. We're cleaning things up and getting a better understanding of how things flow through and preparing to make movements across the various funds where we can for expenses and accommodate them and utilize those funds better. Our goal is to start the new year with new cash accounts where we have more internal controls over them, and move to more ACH payments, and everything for both the water side and the town side will be on positive pay, meaning nothing goes out unless it's approved. So the bank will notify us every day of anything that comes in, and we have to approve payment, and then it's paid, which means we see the actual transaction where it went. If it's ACH, we get confirmed by the other bank that it went through that account. If it's a hard check, we can see the back of the check and that it was properly passed through a bank or a financial institution. Someone can still lift a check and get it through a bank, and that's out of our control. But if it's stamped through a bank the right way, we have to challenge it in a different way. So those are our goals with the cash side.
That sounds great. I guess the only question I would have, and I've got my town council hat on in addition to budget and finance, if we need Sender, Carl, and or Daniel for anything between now and the end of the year, we probably need to give them a little advance notice so they can, I guess that's a question.
Well, that was the plan, is to hopefully, when Trista gets back, she and I will review things and what we're going to do with year end. Okay?
Very good. Any other questions on the budgeting? Otherwise, we'll move to the unfinished business.
John, this is Zafar. One question about the budget, please.
Go ahead, Zafar.
I think basically what I'm requesting is this possible? Somebody can email these summary sheets because it's maybe you do post on the website, but I'm sorry I was not able to find it because sometimes it's hard to really follow through the summary sheets if it's not pre-received or not pre-posted. So anyway, if Helen or Perry can just email it to me, the summary sheets, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, we could definitely do that, Zafar.
Thank you.
Anything else on the financials? Otherwise, we'll move on to this unfinished business, which we can blow through pretty quick. Looks a little intimidating, but most of it is old news. The Lakeshore Drive Sewer Project, I know that the attorney has now been contacted by the Michigan City Sanitary District about the expenditure. I think Tim was involved in that conversation. But that's now become a legal issue, so essentially we don't need to spend much time on it other than to be aware of the fact that it hangs out there. The hope is, I think.
John, can I just ask you a question I asked last time? I know this number keeps getting bigger, which I'm not asking that question. But the question I'm asking is, I thought when we were doing the project, that part of it was, since we're opening up the street, that we also had some engineering done for the water department. And is that correct? And if it is that an expense that we should say, well, obviously that's our expense if we did it for the water department?
John, if I could answer, I do believe that the water department got their own billing for engineering, so it's not part of that number.
So it should not be part of this number?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a question.
Okay,
I think the detail on that.
that's okay. I'm not gonna.
The detail on that question, I think, needs to be yet determined. You may be right, Laurel. I'm not sure. We can find out from Haas if the number that. So essentially, what's going to happen here is, if we're able to negotiate that number to a certain number, then we're going to have to find out whether there is any differential that does belong with one or the other. But right now, I don't think it's fruitful to spend a whole lot of time on it until we finish the negotiations with Michigan City. Once we determine what the actual expenditure will be, we can find out if there's anything that does get attributed to water. I don't know that for sure. Laurel is correct. Laurel's correct. Right now, on the water side, we are moving forward with that as a separate project. The water services on Lakeshore Drive as a separate project. And there is separate invoicing from Haas relative to that new project. But the original engineering, there may have been some original engineering relative to water, but we can sort that out later. 2022 CCMG, we have not heard. They were supposed to let us know in October whether that we were going to get awarded anything. We have not heard yet. And as you can see with these numbers, we've talked about this before, what our town share is of that expenditure and what we'll get in return. However, we do not know whether we're going to get anything from NDOT yet. So in terms of grants, we have had a meeting with Christensen on September 21st. We narrowed down the scope of what the grant applications menu that they presented to us. We're going after 3 or 4 different specific things. We don't need to get into a whole lot of level of detail. I just wanted to kind of flesh that out for everyone at the budget and finance level. We are moving forward with that. We're expecting a price proposal from Christensen relative to those specific grant applications that we intend for them to go after. Once that proposal is in, the council will have to approve that expenditure, and then we'll move forward on those grants. We may get some money. We may get a zero interest loan on the fire station, for instance. There's some other things that we may be able to get. Capital plan financing. I think if we can talk about this now. I'll pop that up. This is one of those things that I think we may need, or not need necessarily, but might be helpful for Carl and his group to help us with. There were some projections originally on the original capital expenditure plan that Carl helped us with last time around. I'm sorry, I've got the wrong one again. Sorry. Here we go. So hopefully you can see on your screens the current document that is somebody speaking that I'm missing out on here?
I'm sorry, what's that, John?
I don't know. I keep getting somebody mumbling in the background. I don't know if it's somebody in your end or what's going on. But anyway, this is the current. Is there another conversation going on I'm not aware of, or? Okay. So what we have here is the. Can you see the sheet on your screen with cap? So I guess what I'm asking.
Yes, we can. John, we're having issues with the internet connection. We lost connectivity and the internet's been intermittent. That's been the issue.
Okay, no problem. So what this is the working document that our clerk's office has been using currently. We've made some adjustments in this, Carl. I don't think you've seen this in a while. You helped us with revenue sources and some projections on the reports that you did last year. I think we need to tighten this report up based on these new numbers that we developed. I think, Mark, do you want to speak to that just slightly about how the homework you did relative to this capital thing so Carl knows where we're at?
Sure, we met individually with the other department heads. We forecasted out the next 5 years, addressing some of their major expenditures. We added to this plan. There's a few things that are still missing on here, but for the most part, we're probably a good 90%. Everything's on there.
So the idea, I think, Carl, is to just revisit this capital expenditure projection, and then with your help, for instance, one thing that's kind of one of the elephants in the room is on the fire side. We are in the process of bidding that as a design build project, so we will actually have a budget number the middle of October to be able to plug in so that we can revisit that. It's going up from that original $1 million that we talked about. And then Mark has, again, adjusted a lot of these projections to be a little more accurate. But this bottom end, I think, was a bit of a reach for us, and we do need some help from you, I think, on that.
Okay.
So we can get this to you if you haven't seen it in a while.
I have it.
Okay. But it should be a little bit more accurate in terms of these projections now than what it was last time we visited it. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
John, question. Yeah, John. On the parks capital, keep in mind the 410,000 from parks. That is not a capital request. That will be coming out of their general operating budget each year. I confirmed that with Joyce Schmidt, so we can take that 410 and it'd be more to the revenue side of their general funds.
Good. So I think it's important for Carl, for you to know, and for all of us, I think, right now the plan is we have a little group, we call it our working group for the capital program. That plan generally meets right after this meeting, at least the last couple of times. And then our plan is to present to the council at the December meeting kind of a refined document so that we can take a look at the year-end financials and the capital program projections, and then make decisions about which things move forward. So I don't know if that works for you, but that would be the time frame that we would like to see.
Sure. And when do you anticipate getting bids on the fire station?
We will have our first phase numbers. It's somewhat of a complex process. We have a design build team that will be ultimately selected in December, one design build team that will go to final documents and actual numbers. The first phase in October will be a budgetary slam, and we'll have not really detailed drawings, but it'll be a rough idea. We will distill down however number of bids we get to 3. And then in November, they are tasked with tightening up their numbers so that we select 1. And then the ultimate construction documents and all would be sometime in December with a very tight number then projected for the capital program. The budget numbers should be, relatively sensible, and then we'll tighten the process. It's kind of some of it's dictated by state code and other things are just by virtue of the process. So we'll have better numbers for you, at least the projections in October, mid-October, so that maybe in November we can, rework this document such that by December it's kind of halfway accurate.
Okay.
I don't have anything else on this particular thing. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. What I'll do is go back to the agenda. Contract reviews. I don't know if there's much to say about these right now, Mark. I don't think there is.
We initiated the new contract on the waste removal for next year for 12 months at 61 cents per household increase per month. And then we are 6 weeks out before our health insurance renewal is due. And they are currently switching the marketplace, looking for healthcare alternatives. Otherwise, we will be renewing the current contract and we'll have a cost in about 6 weeks.
So we may be by our November meeting, by the Budget and Finance November meeting, we may have some numbers then.
Yes, I believe our renewal date is November 15th is what General Insurance has said as far as wanting to get our renewal out.
So if we have changes that need to be made, we'll at least be able to see them before that renewal date. Public Works Accounting, we've already kind of gone over that. Helen's working toward, a little more integration of the water with the rest of the funding. So I think unless somebody has questions, I think we can move on. Stop 29, I did get a call from one of those property owners. Woodruff's invoicing supposedly is imminent. That's another one of these things relative to that Go Bond account needing to be reconciled with some of the expenditures that were taken out of there that probably didn't need to be taken out of there, such that we still have roughly 100,000 or so to negotiate with on that invoicing. The Lakeshore Drive Water Improvement Project, that's projected to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 900,000. The decision was made to extend that bid date forward such that we may bid it in early part of next year. We are in the process of trying to get some material purchase numbers down and potentially make a material purchase, and that we would hold on to those materials. And I think that was in the neighborhood of less than 200,000, if I'm not mistaken, Mark.
You're correct. At your council meeting this coming Monday, the council will have a minimum of 2 to 3 quotes to review. It will be on your agenda, and Superintendent Greg Parrish will be at the meeting to explain the supply chain issues, the timelines. Then we'll be seeking approval of one of the quotes to move forward with the purchasing of supplies for that specific project.
And the reason we're doing this is partly because we want to reduce the risk that the contractors are involved with in terms of the supply chain issues, so that we get better numbers from the contractors, and also so that we can get the materials in-house so that we have them. Some of these lead times are significant on the materials for the water project. Fire station vehicles design build, we already talked a little bit about that. That process is continuing, and we should have some better numbers to present to the council. Rescue vehicle purchase, this is kind of significant for budget and finance. We had a $100,000 line item in our column for 2022 budget for the fire department capital equipment. We spent $40,000 roughly on the SCBA compressor with the new SCBA system that was put in. We did get grants for about $150,000 on the individual SCBA equipment, but the compressor to allow us to use the new equipment did come up to around a $40,000 expenditure, which the council approved. So this $60,000 rescue vehicle purchase, which we're in the middle of, would be already budgeted for, but it does need council approval. We made a presentation to the Fire Commission last evening. It will be presented to the council at their meeting coming up as well, so that we can get that approved. We have a vehicle much the same as the street department did. We have a vehicle that's ready to roll with about a $70,000 list that we're going to be able to get for right around 60. So that's where we're at with that. If anybody has any questions, but you will see that come up at the council meeting for approval. The fire commission, by the way, did unanimously approve the moving forward with that. The fire truck purchase is another one that we do have a number now. That number is actually $750 now rather than $650. We hope to be able to potentially use some of these local income tax funding to help make that a little more affordable. And that's another one of these items that'll be involved with the capital plan, and also the expenditure hopefully be approved. It's a 2-year lead time roughly, so hopefully we can get that expenditure approved with the capital plan in December. Raises for employees. Mark, do you want to address this a little bit, or we're?
Sure. Saturday on October 1st, the LaPorte County has initiated a half a percent increase to the local income tax, the LID tax, that is a payroll tax affecting all people that are working here in LaPorte County. The town is projected to receive an additional $263,000 next year from this additional tax. And therefore, the police department personnel has put in front of the town council a proposal to utilize some of those additional tax revenues to increase the funding for the first responders here in the town. They did their initial proposal about 2 weeks ago on the council, and they'll be asking that the council review that request again at this coming Monday's meeting in hopes of making a decision on potential raises for 2023. I will add with some sincere condolences this morning to the family of Deputy Tobin Babcock, who unexpectedly passed away
I'm not sure if we're still connected.
Can you hear us?
I lost you right in the middle of you, right after you were condolences to Toby's family, and then I lost you.
Yes, so our condolences to the family. Therefore, it places us in a position where we have to get improvements for new deputy marshal for the town of Beach. And it'll be imperative that we know moving forward what our salaries will be for the new employee. So I'll be getting an email out later today to the town council asking for consideration at this coming Monday's meeting to hopefully make a decision. Decision on that so that I can begin recruitment in the next week, knowing the potential salary range for a new deputy marshal.
I think it's important to note that we have market forces in play that are very significant. I think what's been shared with us by our officers is that adjacent departments is particularly considerably more. The county has now jumped their salaries up considerably, so we're faced with these market conditions that are going to drive this process. Sad to say, I don't know if it's on my end or your end, you guys are bouncing in and out on me, but at any rate, I think unless there's other questions on unfinished business, we'll move along to that budget process line item. Essentially, the point here was that the gateway submittal was complete. I'm not exactly sure when we know about the final levy from DLGF, but I think that's the last part of the process for budgeting for 2023, unless I could stand corrected by anybody. Go ahead, Carl.
Monday, you have your final adoption of the budget for the 2023 budget. So that should be on Monday's council agenda. And then that ordinance, once it's signed, will be uploaded into Gateway. And then between now and probably mid-December, the DLGF will start working on their final review, and we'll have a final budget order either November or December by then.
You don't have any feel for where they're going. I mean, we were hoping to get a little more this year. It's hard to know, I suppose, until they.
Well, the max levy increase from last year is 5%. And so between Tim, Helen, and Trista had factored those into the budgets, and you had your public hearing last month. Unless Helen has or Tim has any reason to believe, I think the budget, I would anticipate the budget being approved. Go ahead, Mark.
I think we're back to internet. Whatever conversation just occurred, the rest of us didn't hear it. So are we all mic'd up?
All right, the budget's completed in Gateway, and once it's approved, then we'll we'll go into Gateway, notify them, and the rest of it's up. To the state, and then we'll see.
Sounds good. And I'm assuming that's on our agenda for the coming town council meeting. And then the other thing would be, can somebody make sure that that rescue vehicle purchase is on the agenda as well?
We need to put two resolutions on that agenda. One is to roll over the capital development funds from this year to next year. We definitely have to do it. It's just a one little paragraph thing. And the other is we need to establish a new fund in our GL for the lit tax for first responders, public safety. Okay?
Helen, we'll make sure you get the ordinance for the budget so that that can be also available for the council to sign on Monday. And you'll need to have a majority of the council present to adopt the budget in person.
I'm not sure she heard you, Carl. I think we're all still connected, but I just see that they're coming back, and I hope they're coming back on.
We'll call her after this meeting just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Helen and Mark, you guys checked out. Carl just mentioned that he's going to have the ordinance back, or at least we're going to have some conversation about the ordinance. I don't know if you all heard that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Then I think we're done with unfinished business unless somebody has questions. And if there's, I did not have any new business items unless somebody else does. I'm showing you guys muted, Mark. I don't know what's going on.
No, you should be able to hear us.
Okay. So does anybody have any other new business? Otherwise, I think we can adjourn. They're gone again. Mark, if you can hear us, we're ready for adjournment unless you see anything else from people in the public.
No, we're good.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Sounds good. The only other thing for you, Mark, do we want to stick around for a capital meeting, or do we just want to wait until next month?
I will wait until we have John Stone back, and then anything we need, we can do an email before then.
Second that motion.
Okay, so we can adjourn. Can you make sure that Rescue 3 replacement is on the agenda for me?
Yes, I will speak to Deanna for you.
Thanks, everyone. Zafar will send those statements over to you, the ones that we reviewed today.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.